friend of mine moved into a brand new build house and wanted to start his first ever garden. Now, it's not like he's never gardened before, but this was actually his garden and he wanted to be able to make it into something that he would enjoy. So at about 2 years, no, maybe 18 months after he moved in, he then asked me to give him some help. I'm Rosie Hardy, this is Rosie Hardy Gardening. If you enjoy our videos, please do subscribe to the channel. And we're going to take a look at this new build garden of my friend Steve. So the first photographs that you're going to see, or pictures that you're going to see regarding this property, show you just a muddy patch. Basically, there was just the fencing put in, the soil was put in, and that is what he had to start off with. Now, it was reasonable soil. The local area is quite a heavy clay, and there was soil put back in which still had quite a bit high clay amount into it. So this was something that we had to really consider. And then, you know, you get these properties and you're given a certain amount of hard standing that they put in. So he sort of sat with it for a little while, and the actual contractors gave him 2 trees. So one, he had a conference pear tree that was planted in the corner, and then the second tree he could give the choice, and he decided to have a crab apple. So those were both put out into the corners of the property. He then decided how much paving he actually wanted. They put I think it was 2 or 3 slabs wide in there initially. He then decided how much of that he wanted to do, and in the next photographs you can see he's working on it, and he's putting in hardened dried oak timbers as his edging right the way around so that he can get his paving to that, and then he's got this area, and then the actual contractors came in and did what they said they would do and put turf down, which he was quite happy with to start off with. And this actually is a really good way of looking at what you can do when you move into somewhere new. If it is a blank canvas and you don't have the time to, or necessarily the money to be able to do everything all at once, then go for an option whereby it is usable. And by turfing the whole thing down, he then had a space that he could use. So he was able to put his dryer up so he could hang up his clothing to wash. He was able to work around, put the edge, edge board in. Well, no, he put the edge board in before the turf went down. But what he didn't do was he didn't put the slabs down, and he didn't make his raised beds. So he did all of that before he then thought about what he was going to do with the larger bit of ground that he had. Now, he didn't want me to help him with the raised beds or any of that type. He was quite happy to do all of that himself. And it's good because when you do it yourself, you own it. You know what you've done. You know what's gone into it. You can relate to what you've done. So he made a really beautiful raised bed, which he then put in stones to make an alpine raised trough. Bought all the alpines himself, planted it up, looks great, no problem at all. The other raised bed initially was going to be a raised bed for vegetables and herbs, but it sort of changed its course as to what it gets used for every year. And also what he's found, because that one wasn't looked after as well, the soil has gone down a little bit in that, so he's going to have to raise it up and do something else with that. But what you then end up with is you end up with this large square which has got a gravel piece at the bottom here. You've got a raised bed here, you've got a raised bed here, the paving has gone out and gone in, and you've got your nice path all the way down here, and then all of this is grass except for the 2 trees which seem to be in these positions here. So he called me up and he said, Rosie, I really want to have some beautiful full borders, something that is full of flower, that has got giving me interest right the way through the year, but I really don't know what sort of shape I should be making this. So when I was talking to him on the phone, I said, well, I'll come up and I'll come up and stay, and we can have a little look and talk about it. I said, I suggest you get your hose pipe out. And what I suggested to him was, if you want to make a nearly circular lawn in the middle there, you're not going to get it because you aren't actually a square. You're now a narrow, well, not a narrow, you're now an oblong basically. So if you get your hose pipe out and you run your hose pipe out and then go to all your windows that overlook that garden and see whether it is the shape that you want it to be, because at least with a hose pipe you can move it around. It's better than using marker paint, because marker paint you have to scrub out, and also it's a chemical. Just using your hose pipe, it's ideal because you can get it round to whatever you want, and then you can mark out and take off the turf as and when you need to. So this is where we started, and I said, and remember that if you go upstairs to the upstairs windows and look down from those, you will find that you can actually see what you've got in the way of a shape. And it's really quite interesting to do that. It works so well from the point of view of visualizing in your mind what you're going to get and how you're going to get it. And I said to him, start off with the size that you think you want, then take all your turf off. Did that, took all the turfs off. He then was taking all the soil off those and reusing some of the soil that was in the bottom of the, on the base of the turfs, and then have a look at it and sit with it for a while and understand whether or not that is going to be what you actually want to look at. So here we have the plan, and basically you've got your roadway here. The drive comes in to the garage and the gate that goes into the back garden. There is a front garden here, which we're not dealing with. The house is in this area here. There are patio doors here which go out and you can look out into the garden there. Kitchen window here which looks out, and then upstairs there are rooms that look over it. So what was there originally? You go in the gate, there was a little bit of paving going down here, a little bit going along here. So you've got this bit of garden here, so you can see once the extra paving and the 2 raised beds that he put in were put in, you are left with this oblong at the top there, which means that you can't get a circle in there, but you can get a nice elliptical shape in there, which is what was happening. This is the pear tree location over here, this is the crabapple location over here, and then these are the new beds that came through here. This little alleyway, narrow alleyway, is nothing, it's where the bins are stored, etc. So the raised bed here just cuts that off so you can see things. And then the little corner bed there as well. This is where the garden shed is, and then there's another storage space and gravel area at the back. So everything can go into the garden via the garden gate. You do not have to take it through the house, thank goodness. Just remember, none of this is done to scale. This is just a rough sketch for me to have an idea, and this is how the editing and my thought processes start when we're looking at a garden. So once all of the groundwork is done and all of the turfs are lifted off the shape that the border is wanted to be, then it was a matter of Steve sort of looking at it and going, right, I want to live with this for a little bit, make sure I've got it correct. So he then covered over all the area where he'd lifted the turf with a small amount of mulch, because at the end of the day this was clay soil and it was going to need something on there. That would also help stop it from drying out through the period. Now he'd also inherited quite a lot of plant material which was in containers, which were shrubs and climbers from his late mother. And so from that point of view, he wanted to get those in. Also, he wasn't very keen on the end fence just stopping, so he went and got himself some really nice palisade to go along the top, which then changed the outlook of the fence as well. He did all the painting of the fence to make sure that it was going to be perfectly okay before needing to put plants in there, which made life a lot easier. So this was a matter of thinking about it in a really good way. He then sort of paced it out for me. I said, don't worry about being absolutely accurate with the amount of plant material, because I have the benefit that I can bring up more material and then take it back, and then you just pay for what I put in. So that is the way that I tend to do it. And tend to work on, you know, what the area is, and we can do it in square feet or we can do it in square meters. And I would normally use 1 plant per square foot, or between 7 and 9 plants per square meter, depending on what you are using. Now, Steve also, because this isn't his first garden, not his first time in gardening, it's his first garden, but he has gardened before. He knows the benefit of FYM, farmyard manure, and so he got himself bags of farmyard manure, he got himself bags of topsoil, and whenever he dug a hole out, he would then mix everything with that. He'd dig a big hole, mix it all up, and then he would mulch around the plants. So he was doing everything correctly to make sure that plants got away and did incredibly well. Then it was just really for him to say what he wanted, and the answer to that was, please can I have as much colour and interest right the way through the year? Well, that's what most people want. But he wanted brash as well. So he wanted some soft colours, but he also wanted pops of strong colours. So he loves GM Totally Tangerine, he loves GM Scarlet Tempest. Instantly you've got some pops of colour. And then for yellow we were going to use the scabious, and we were also going to use Cephalaria. But because this is a smaller garden, I was not going to use Cephalaria gigantea, so we used Cephalaria alpina, which gives you a smaller base but lovely wiry flower heads coming out above that, which really helped. So once he'd got a lot of climbers and a few shrubs in there, then I went up with plants for him and we started laying the plants out as they wanted to be, understanding, and by this time Steve had a good understanding of where the sun, where the shade was going through the day, so we could work that out. But also the corner where the crabapple, the malus, was, is a very damp corner, and it went downhill slightly and went damp at the back, so we had to work out what plant material would be best in there, along with the extra mulching and everything else. So there are lots of pictures showing you the plants laid out on the soil. Even with having had that original little bit of mulch on there, it's gone into the soil, so you can see the soil is quite bare. And once all the plants were put in, it was all mulched over again, and it really has taken off and looks fantastic. So I have to say he's done a grand job with it all. There is the little island bed, and the little island bed is down here. So you had the main beds going all the way around. This is your shady corner over here near the crabapple. This one's quite sunny and going through. But the one thing that Steve has noticed while he's been living there is the wind that whips through the garden and around. It's quite extraordinary. It's quite, without realising, they're quite high up and quite exposed, and it really is a windy garden. So anything that grows up to the top of the fence needs to be then spallied out so that it doesn't flop about too much and get caught by the wind and pull itself off its fencing. So that is something that he's learned, and he's learned to keep them a little bit lower, but he allows them to have a little bit of height above the fence as well. His neighbours don't mind, so that is brilliant. And he has noticed more and more wildlife coming into the garden, more pollinating insects coming into the garden, so that is great. And it's really good to see from quite a sterile brown back garden to the colour and the amount that he has got flowering, that it really looks fantastic. So once the garden was all planted up and we had the little corner bed here, now this is an extremely sunny, dry spot for this corner bed. It has a shrub in it, it has a cotinus in there, which means that it will create a little bit of shade, and then you've got the alpine bed behind it. With the fact that the garage is here right next to this bed, and that is a red wall, it acts like a radiator. He's put in some raised planters in there as well, and I've advised on what climbers to put up. But again, this creates a bit of warmth, so it's always warmer on this side of the garden, and then gradually from the pear tree along the back to the crabapple, which is where it is the most moist, and then down here, which is the shadiest, and the free montodendron is growing here, and that absolutely loves that area completely. So we have the pear tree here and the border going along here, the crabapple here. This is the very damp bit, and it goes that way downhill. This area here is the bit that is the most difficult area, because this is the coldest, the wettest and the shadiest. So there is one that we have a problem with. Then you're coming back down here. This is where the Fremontodendron is growing and is very, very happy. Might be just a fraction further down there. And then, as I said, you've got the garage wall here, which is a red wall, which makes it very much a radiator, and it radiates heat out towards here. This is the small bed. So this is the warmest, this is the sunniest, this is the raised alpine bed. And, you know, that bit is the one that was done first. These are all spaces, you've got a pathway there. And in the summer, sometimes the close area is right in the middle here. So what you're seeing mainly then is this bit and that bit, which is fine if you're not in your garden all the time. So this paving area gets used a lot, and from this direction, looking down onto the garden, from the top bedrooms and the office, it looks really superb. So once it was all laid out, once it was all planted correctly, as we were laying out, or while we were there, we decided actually Steve wanted it to be a little bit wider, so it did end up being just fractionally larger than the original idea. But that was fine, because it meant that he had depth and we could utilize the space more. So originally this area here was very, very narrow, only sort of this, and we moved it out to there. So he increased it by about a foot, or 30 centimetres. That's another depth of one more plant. So instead of only having 2 plants deep, he's now 3 plants deep. And that actually makes a huge amount of difference when you're trying to put the plants in and give you all the style. So once it was all planted in, been given all of its FYM, farmyard manure, all of the topsoil, and then top dressed, little bit of food. He had some fish and bone or something else, you know, a multi-purpose fertilizer. He was always putting that in as well, just to give everything as much chance as it possibly could. Every single plant had a little bit of water put into the hole so that it went in, it was moist. Then once everything was planted, everything was watered, not just with the up and over. He'd used that for the grass, for the turf, but in the actual area he went round with the hose pipe with a lance on it, and he watered every single plant. And I said, don't overwater, keep it, if we have a dry spell, then look at them. If they start to wilt, yes, by all means give them some water, but make sure that they aren't watered too much over the top, because otherwise they don't put their roots down properly. So we had this talk about the watering. He was absolutely fine with that. Then it was a matter of watching everything go and understanding what to do with each plant. So he had the list of plants. He's made his own plan of what he wants to do, and then we would go through all of that, and I gave him a list of jobs that you have to do with all of the plants. So he would be regularly deadheading plants that required it. Anything that didn't need a dead head but it was better and it had a cut back, he had that on his list as well. And because he's a friend, he had instant access to me and going, Rosie, what am I doing wrong here? Can I do something else? And he loved it. And you will see in the photographs of it after a year down the line how full it is, how good it's growing. And then he's sort of saying to me, oh, maybe I do need to stake 1 or 2 things that are flopping over. I said, you can either stake or you can thin them out and just cut off what's flopping onto the grass, or you can then now divide. They've been in 2 years, you've given them so much food, because after the first feed they weren't fed, they've only ever been mulched after that. If they are at a point where they've grown really well, then lift them, divide them and put them into another area where you've got a little bit of a hole. You'll always get gaps. You know, this is part of gardening. This is how you learn. You will learn that perhaps something that was in, say, one of the tougher areas, and the tougher areas I would say are this bit here. You know, you get the odd thin bit, so we put something else in. And then he decided there wasn't enough evergreen, so we decided on getting a holly. There used to be an acer here, for instance. That's been replaced with a lovely blue holly, and the acer has moved to a slightly better location for it. So those are all things, and that is all the course of the editing. So you will hear a lot about editing, and editing is really just this fact of, you know, it's going to your garden and it's going, oh, I didn't quite like that, that didn't work very well. Taking pictures regularly, once a month, from the same spot in your garden so you can see what is happening, means that, you know, he can always stand here on the paving and he can take that. He's quite happy to take a video and then send him, say, oh, something's going wrong here. And I'll go, oh, well, that plant is meant to be dying back now, so you need something else to be coming up and taking over from it. And since putting these in, we've put in snowdrops, we've put in other bulbs and everything else, which means that he's enhancing what has already been there. And that is what editing does. It enhances what you've got to start off with, and you then end up with what you want. And then through the years, you just thin, you tidy up. Something doesn't work, well, we put something else in. There were 1 or 2 plants in here which were short-lived perennials anyway, and they did last really well. They lasted for their 2-3 years. Now you need to replace them and put something else in. That is absolutely fine, and this is all the process of creating these good gardens. But Steve is really happy with what he's got there. He's learning himself. He doesn't send me too many queries anymore. In fact, he's sending me videos going, time to split, and I'm going, yep, time to lift and split. So this is how you can start off with the blank canvas, do it slowly, edit it out, understand what you've got, understand where it is sunny, where it is warmer, where it is shadier. Don't just go, oh, I'm just going to put all of these plants in. Well, yeah, it works, but you'll be doing an awful lot of moving and shifting. So just a slight stance. And to be honest, he started off with the little border here first, and we knew it was hot, and that worked really well. That one, you know, came up really, really well. So that's sort of somewhere where he's sitting and looking all the time. You know, the clothing dryer goes in here. So, you know, sometimes you're not seeing out the back here. You're not always looking out to the back. And really what you end up with is you end up with a garden which you enjoy. You'll be able to sit here, have your drinks, have your coffee. He has an office at the top. He can look out of the window from the office and look down onto the garden, and you will see with the views from the top looking down on the garden how complete it is and how well it looks. And you will see the pops of colour that are in there from the gaillardias, the coreopsis, the geums, everything else, and they all make it, because you've got some lovely softs, you've got blues, and then suddenly these lovely pops of colour. And I think with a treated fence behind it makes so much difference, so that you get all of that work done, because otherwise if you don't do the treating of the fence before you start planting, you've got to go in there, you've got to disturb everything that's gone in. So get all those jobs done first. Start with your blank canvas, get your borders, put the mulches down, then start planting. Everything will be successful, and have really good fun enjoying your garden space. Thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.